Hello there. Welcome to a review of the game Metroid Fusion. But this is also a video just talking about generally my experience with the Metroid series as a whole and why I'm excited for Dread, which is, for those who don't know, the new Metroid game, Metroid 5, coming out on Switch in October. So just a rundown of why I'm excited for that game, despite my rocky history with the series. I'm reviewing Metroid Fusion because I recently finished it on WiiU Virtual Console. It's the first Metroid game I've finished, but I've played many other ones, so that's what I'm gonna go in depth here a little bit with that. So the first Metroid game I played was Other M. Not a good start. I know, for those who don't know, Other M is kind of the black sheep of the franchise. But I had a Wii and I played Other M, and I didn't finish it because it's Other M and it's just kind of a tedious game. It's actually not a very good game, so it makes sense that would be the one I wouldn't finish. And then, but I also played Prime 3 on the Wii. Just go run out of the Wii ones. Didn't get very far in that either. I played a little bit of Metroid on NES Online. I played a decent amount of Super Metroid on my SNES Classic. That was probably the Metroid game I had the most experience with before diving into Fusion. That's part of the reason I chose to play Fusion. Fusion is Metroid 4, Super Metroid is 3. So it's if I've already played a bit of 3 and I want to play 5, which is the new one coming out, they form a narrative, but you don't need to play them. Their narratives work fine on their own. I was just let's play 4, and then combined with what I know about 3, I should be able to bridge the gap. Metroid Fusion, I played it on WiiU VC. It was originally a GBA game, which means that the gap between Metroid 4 and Metroid 5 was has been nearly 20 years. So Metroid Dread is a big game for Metroid fans. And if you have any interest in the series, I would go out and support it, because it seems like it's gonna do a lot of things with Metroid that it seems like it'd be modern. I love Metroid games, none of them feel modern, which for me can be a sticking point with games. So the thing about Metroid gameplay is it's very explory, that's a plus. It's very backtracky, that's a middle. It's very puzzly, that can be a plus. What I'm saying is that it's very easy to get lost, and it's very easy to get confused, and it's very easy to get frustrated. And I never finish Metroid games because I consistently get stuck on some puzzle, some boss, some level, not really boss, we'll get to that. Some puzzle, some part of the game where I don't know where to go, and I don't know what to do, and I'm out of ideas, and so I stop playing, and then I don't come back to it. Prime 3 and Other M, I wouldn't even say I really, enjoyed that much. I played a lot of Other M. I gave Other M more chances than I should have, but Prime 3, I think I was burnt out from Other M, because I just barely even touched that one. Super Metroid is the first Metroid game I genuinely enjoyed. That game is a masterpiece. It's amazing. As I said, even there are things that feel unmodern about it, and that's good. I don't think it should be remade. It's too well done to be remade or reimagined the way Metroid 2 was. That's the last Metroid game that came out. Metroid 2: Samus Returns on the 3DS is a remake of Metroid 2 for the Game Boy. I haven't played that one. That would probably be next up on my list. That's the one that the Dread is being made by the same team, so it's most similar in style. But all of that aside, we're almost 5 minutes into a Metroid Fusion review, and I've barely talked about Metroid Fusion. Metroid Fusion is the first Metroid game I finished, and I think the reason for that is because the game is a lot more linear. This could be a flaw if you're a big fan of the series, but if you're somebody who doesn't know the series really, or like me, has trouble getting into it because they keep starting the games and then putting them down, this one's a good one to start with, because it's it's very, like, there are areas, and you go between the areas, you go to and from the areas. It's not one huge map. I mean, it is, but the huge map has, like, different smaller maps, whatever. It's very linear. There are navigation rooms where your objective is given to you, so you have an objective and you go do it. But I don't think that detracts from the game. Like, even if it doesn't detract from the exploration. There's still a lot of parts of the map you have to fill out on your own. There's still a lot of points in the game where you have to find your own path because you're blocked off from the navigation rooms. And there's a lot of other things this game. The linear narrative focus of Metroid Fusion allows the game to really shine in another area that I think is often overlooked. That's something that's really good in Metroid games is it's very cinematic. Metroid games are much more cinematic than the usual Nintendo title. You can tell right from the start. They usually start with a Nintendo Presents cutscene, then game title. A lot of like Mario games don't do that. Even Zelda games don't always do that. Metroid is a much more cinematic Nintendo franchise, despite, having... It's gotten too cinematic. Like, Other M has way too much of a story focus, but Fusion has the perfect balance of, like, cool story and narrative stuff, but also, like, plenty of gameplay and exploration. And that, like, linearity of it really helps that element of Metroid shine, despite the fact that this is, like, a 16-bit GBA game. Like, it's just, there's so many cool cinematic moments. There's this creature called the SAX, and I don't want to spoil too much, but it's basically, like, an evil Samus that hunts you, which, I mean, I think other Metroid games have done before, but this one is very, very good with, like, the cinematicness of it and, like, the horror vibes of fighting this character. There's a lot of really cool, like, horror action set pieces with this thing. You can tell they're trying to do, like, the next evolution of that with Metroid Dread, the new game coming out, because they've got these robots that chase you. But I mean, for a GBA game, this is some really, really cool stuff. I really just... Everything else is just solid Metroid level design, just a bit more linear than usual, which, for me, made it easier for me to start the game, work through the game, and finish the game within a week or two, rather than leaving it in hiatus forever. So for me, that was a plus. For some, that could be a minus, but because of how it benefits this cinematicness, I don't think it's a negative. The story's really strong, I think. Now we'll get on to the flaws, which are kind of the same flaws I have with every Metroid game. There's just certain mechanics in Metroid that don't control the way I'd like them to. Wall jumping sucks. Like, roof climbing, wall jumping, ledge grabbing stuff is so finicky in this game and basically every Metroid game I've ever played. There was another one that was on the tip of my tongue, but I don't remember, so I'll just talk about the save system sucks. It's one of those games. It's always, every Metroid game I've played it's one of those things where there's a save room and there's save rooms periodically, and if you die, you get sent back to the save room. And I mean, it kind of works in this series just because of the exploration stuff, but there are some parts, I mean, like every Metroid game I've ever played, there's some part, the save rooms are a little too spread out. The replaying stuff gets a little tedious. I used restore points. Not all the time, but I used them quite a bit on the WiiU Virtual Console. Like emulator restore points. Especially on boss fights, which I'll get to as kind of a flaw that's unique to this game. It's just, in general, Metroid games, like, I'm already confused and sometimes frustrated by getting lost, but constantly dying and having to, like, redo things really does not help. And, like, I always run into a situation with Metroid games where I play about an hour and I've had a good play session and I want to keep playing more, and I hit a save room and I'm like, I save and then I keep playing more, and then about 45 minutes from that point, I'm, like, over it. I've played for nearly 2 hours and my puzzle-solving brain is gone, and I'm like, where is the next save room? Where is the next save room? And it doesn't show up, and I get incredibly frustrated, and basically having to, like, look up a guide for, like, every little thing just to... At one point during this playthrough, I had just unlocked the super jump ability, which that's the other ability. I don't like the way that controls, and I don't like the way it controls in Super Metroid either. But I literally forgot that I had just gotten that ability and was like freaking out trying to figure out where to find it on the guide, and then I had to look up a YouTube video, and then when I found it, I'm like, oh, I'm a stupid idiot who forgot I just unlocked how to get up here with this new power. Like, oh, I'm dumb, but it's because I had been playing for like 2 hours at that point, looking for a save room. It's just like the ability, just Metroid Dread being on the Switch where I can put the console in sleep mode, or like, and it seems like from what they showed in the treehouse that they're going to be a little less, like when you get killed by the robots in that game, they're not going to send you all the way back to your save. So just being a little more generous about respawn points, plus being on a system that I can just put in sleep mode for hours and then come back to, kind of alleviates my, like, my save room complaint about the Metroid series. It's really loud. There's like pipe over there or something. Whatever. So that kind of alleviates one thing. But then there's the wall jumping, which sucks. I don't like the super jump. There's just a lot of clunkiness to the way Metroid games control sometimes. Even the best ones, even the ones that are like clear masterpieces of design, just have these weird control things. And I'm hoping Dread is the smoothest feeling Metroid game ever. Because if Metroid could just feel if Samus could feel as smooth and cool as she's supposed to be, I think I would love Metroid a lot more. It's that little stuff that gets to me. And some of it, I think, I was playing on Wii U Virtual Console, and I noticed certain things like roof grabbing are easier if I just use the D-pad on my controller. Like I was trying to use the joystick, and it does that thing where it has more trouble. Like it'll read your up input as a right input, or your right input as an up input. And there was certain mechanics where I'm like, this would probably control better if I was using a GBA controller. So that's unique to Metroid Fusion. But like I played Super Metroid on the SNES Classic with the SNES controller, and I still had a lot of these same issues. So it's like, it's not just a controller thing. It's kind of a control scheme issue. But the other issue that I had with Fusion, besides the getting lost and besides the save rooms and the control stuff, is boss fights. There's a lot of them. Some of them are good-ish. Some of them are annoying. All of them are very hit the boss in its hyper-specific weak point, camp out and like move and dodge until they're ready to be hit again, hit them in weak point. That kind of boss design gets very old very fast. It's kind of hard to consistently do that well. I think Wario Land Shake It is the only game I've ever played where all the bosses are designed like that like every boss feels good. That game also only has like 6 bosses. This game has probably 20, might be an overestimate, but there are a lot of boss fights. Some of them are bad, and some of them are good, but all of them required copious uses of Wii U Virtual Console restore points for me to not have to redo things before the boss. And that's just for my own sanity, and that's kind of like a thing that I'm like, I don't know how they fix that. I guess just better boss design in the next game is what I hope for. But it's really bosses. Those are my 3 issues with Fusion. Bosses, save room nonsense, and like some of the way that certain abilities control. Everything else is great. I would place this game on par with Super Metroid. It actually honestly controls a little bit smoother than Super Metroid. Like it's a bit of an upgrade in that regard. And I'm glad that I finally finished a Metroid game, because I really was excited for Dread, but I was kind of like, I was kind of thinking to myself, if I'm just always going to buy Metroid games and never finish them, then I don't know if I should pay $60 to buy Metroid Dread, play 2 hours of it, and then go, "Rah!" and hate it. Or not hate it, but just kind of like drop off on it. But if I was able to get through Metroid Fusion, and Metroid Dread seems a lot more player-friendly just by virtue of being a modern game on a modern platform. I think I can learn to love Metroid. There's the title stinger. And I think you can too. if you're like me and you've struggled with Metroid, try out Fusion if you have a Wii U. If you don't have a Wii U, try out Samus Returns on 3DS. If all you have is a Switch, then sorry, Nintendo sucks at porting over old games, I guess. I don't know, but I would recommend trying out the Metroid series if you haven't. It's really something special. And even if you have trouble finishing games, I would recommend giving it more of a go. Metroid Dread looks like it's going to be great, and I can't wait to play it and probably review it, hopefully, if I finish it. I hope I finish it. Arrivederci!